For 30 years, I tried to be the invisible glue that held my family together, quiet, obedient, always hoping one day I'd matter. But that Christmas, I made a choice. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling, and dialed my parents' number. "Mom, Dad, I'll be home this year," I said, my voice laced with excitement, imagining their surprise. Instead, their reply was ice cold. "Don't come back," my mother snapped. "This Christmas is only for special people." The words cut deeper than any blade. Special people? I was their daughter. I forced a smile, though my heart was shattering. "What a pity," I whispered. "I had a special gift." I ended the call, staring at the tiny tree glowing in my apartment. They had no idea what I meant, but soon they would. Days later, my phone would scream with 88 missed calls, and none of them would change a thing. The silence after my mother's words was deafening. I could hear my own pulse thudding in my ears, louder than the cheap heater rattling in the corner of my apartment. My hand trembled around the phone. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard. "Mom, what did you just say?" My voice cracked, betraying the storm brewing inside me. Her sigh came sharp, impatient. "Serafina, don't make this harder. We're in Florida, with your brother Matthew and his family. This holiday is for special people. Please understand." Special people. The phrase echoed in my head like cruel laughter. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, as if the pressure could make the words less real. "I'm your daughter," I whispered. "Do I not count as family?" In the background, I heard Matthew's booming laugh, children squealing, plates clinking. My father's voice joined in cheerfully, muffled but carefree. Not one of them asked about me. Not one of them even seemed to notice my name had been spoken. Mom's tone softened slightly, but it wasn't warmth, it was condescension. "Serafina, you're strong. You've always managed on your own. Matthew, well, you know he's sensitive. He needs us more. Don't ruin this Christmas with arguments." I stared at the small Christmas tree I'd bought from a discount store, its silver ornaments flickering in the dim light. My throat tightened, but I forced a bitter laugh. "Sensitive? Or just spoiled? Don't talk about your brother like that," she snapped. "He's special." The word again. Special. A dagger twisted deeper into my chest. I clenched my jaw, swallowed the rising tide of anger, and forced my voice steady. "Fine. Enjoy your special holiday." Before she could respond, I hung up. The screen went black, reflecting my own pale face, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I wanted to scream, to smash the phone against the wall, but instead I smiled a cold, practiced smile I'd worn for decades. "What a pity," I whispered to the empty room. I had a special gift. On the table beside me lay the photographs. A white, two-story house with a garden fence gleaming in the winter sun, and a sleek black SUV that Matthew had once bragged about wanting. Both already purchased. Both meant for them. I picked up the photos, staring until my vision blurred. For years I'd broken myself in half, working, saving, sacrificing, just to prove I was worth their love. And when I finally had something extraordinary to give, they told me I wasn't special enough to be there. I pressed the photos flat against the table, slid them into an envelope, and drafted a message to the family group chat. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, every keystroke like cutting into my own heart. "Too bad you just missed out on a special gift." I attached the photos, hit send, and turned the phone face down. The room was silent again, except for the faint buzz of the heater. I closed my eyes, leaning back into the chair. For the first time in my life, I felt a strange kind of calm, not relief, not peace, but the cold clarity of someone who finally stopped begging to be seen. After sending that message, I poured myself a glass of cheap red wine and let the memories crawl back in the kind that never left, only waited for quiet nights to suffocate me. I was 7 years old again, sitting cross-legged on the faded carpet of our living room. The Christmas tree twinkled with golden lights, its branches heavy with ornaments Matthew had picked. He was 5, wide-eyed, and already the golden child. Mom handed him box after box, wrapped in shimmering red paper. "This one's from us," she said, her voice glowing with pride. Matthew tore it open, squealing. "A Lego set! Thank you, thank you." He jumped into Dad's arms, who ruffled his hair like he was some little prince. I glanced down at the small package on my lap. A secondhand science book with a note taped on top. Study hard, Serafina. I forced a smile. Thanks, Mom. She nodded distractedly, already leaning toward Matthew. Open the next one, sweetheart. That night, I cried into my pillow, muffling the sound so no one would hear. Years later, when I was 12, it happened again, this time over a coat. Winter was brutal that year. The Ohio wind sliced through our neighborhood like knives. Matthew strutted out in a brand new down jacket, the tag still dangling from his sleeve. I tugged at the oversized hand-me-down jacket Dad had tossed at me. The sleeves were frayed, the zipper half broken. Dad, this doesn't fit, I said, my teeth chattering. He glanced at me over his newspaper. You're old enough to manage, Serafina. Stop complaining. Matthew twirled, arms spread wide. Look, Sarah, it's so warm. I bit my lip until it bled, nodded, and whispered. It looks great on you. No one noticed my hands turning purple that winter. By the time I was 16, I'd stopped asking for anything. Still, the favoritism never loosened its grip. One afternoon, I came home clutching a flyer from school. Mom, there's a free art program. Only need to buy the supplies. Can I join? Her brows furrowed. Serafina, we don't have money for that nonsense. Besides, Matthew needs tutoring for his math. That's where the money goes. But the program... I tried again. Enough. Her tone snapped like a whip. Matthew's future comes first. You're strong. You'll figure it out. I folded the flyer slowly, tucking it into my pocket, and never mentioned it again. That night, I sketched the program's logo on a piece of scrap paper, then crumpled it until the paper tore. The worst memory came at Matthew's 10th birthday. Mom baked a 3-tier chocolate cake, my favorite. For a fleeting moment, I thought, maybe she made it for both of us. When the candles were lit, I whispered, Can I have a piece too? Mom laughed, brushing flour off her apron. You're too grown up for cake, Serafina. Have a cookie instead. She pressed a stale cookie into my hand. Matthew stuffed chocolate into his mouth, laughing, frosting smeared across his cheeks. I smiled, holding the cookie like a prize, but inside, something shattered beyond repair. Back in the present, I stared at my reflection in the wine glass. The same hollow eyes, the same tight smile I'd carried for decades. All those moments, those small humiliations, they'd piled up into a mountain I could never climb. And yet, even then, a small part of me had kept hoping, maybe one day they'll see me. Maybe one day I'll be special too. But that Christmas night, when Mom said those words, only for special people, I knew the truth. In their eyes, I had never been special, and I never would be. By the time I was 14, I had stopped waiting for gifts or praise. Instead, I started working. Every morning before school, I woke up at 5 a.m., pulled on the same threadbare jacket, and pedaled my old bike through the fog to deliver newspapers. The cold air stung my cheeks, and the ink from the papers smeared across my fingers until they turned black. Sometimes, neighbors would wave. Hard-working girl, they'd say. Their words gave me more comfort than anything I ever heard at home. At breakfast, Mom would glance at me rushing in late, hair messy, shoes wet. Serafina, why are you always so disorganized? Look at Matthew, he's already dressed neatly for school. Matthew would grin, twirling the new sneakers they'd bought him. Maybe she just likes looking sloppy. I shoved a slice of toast into my mouth, swallowing the lump in my throat with it. At 15, I picked up shifts at the local diner. After school, while Matthew went to basketball practice, I tied an apron around my waist and carried trays of greasy burgers and fries to families who actually laughed together. One night, I stumbled home close to midnight, smelling like fried onions. Dad was still awake, watching TV. Where have you been? He asked, not taking his eyes off the screen. Working, I said quietly. He finally glanced at me, unimpressed. You're old enough to manage. Just don't let it affect Matthew's studies. He needs peace and quiet. Of course. Always Matthew. I trudged to my room, collapsing on the bed. My hands ached from carrying heavy trays, but I didn't cry. I told myself tears were a waste, better to save strength for tomorrow. By 16, My schedule was a battlefield. School in the morning, diner shifts in the evening, homework in the dead of night. I survived on instant noodles and vending machine snacks. My eyes were bloodshot most mornings, but no one noticed. One evening, I came home to find Mom and Dad sitting proudly at the table while Matthew showed off a shiny new phone. "Look, Serafina," he smirked, waving it. "Mom and Dad said I needed it to stay connected with friends and study groups." "That's nice," I muttered, heading toward my room. Mom's voice cut through the air. "Don't be jealous, Serafina. You've always been independent. You can manage on your own." The phrase again. My curse, my cage. I closed my bedroom door and leaned against it, whispering to myself, "Yes, I can manage. I always have." But the words felt hollow, like I was reciting someone else's mantra. At 17, I tried one last time to be seen. I'd aced a programming project at school. The teacher even called me brilliant. My heart soared. I couldn't wait to tell Mom. That evening, I rushed home, dropping my backpack on the couch. "Mom, I need to tell you something. My teacher said I'm one of the best students in programming." She cut me off, waving a hand. "That's wonderful, honey. Now help Matthew with his essay. He's so stressed." I froze, my smile collapsing. "But Serafina," she said firmly, "your brother needs you. Don't be selfish." Selfish? That word burned worse than invisible. I trudged to Matthew's room, watching him sprawl on the bed while I typed his essay for him. He didn't even say thank you. And in that moment, I realized something bitterly clear. If I wanted a future, it wouldn't come from their recognition. It would come from me, and me alone. So, I kept working, studying, saving. I no longer dreamed of being the special one. I dreamed of escape, of building a life so far removed from theirs that when they finally looked for me, I'd be long gone. When I finally left for college, it wasn't with fanfare or family hugs. It was with a secondhand suitcase, a few crumpled bills from months of diner shifts, and a whispered promise to myself, I will never crawl for their approval again. But freedom came with a price. My scholarship covered only part of tuition. Rent, books, food, those were on me. By day, I sat in classes, struggling to keep my eyes open. By night, I worked at a computer repair shop that smelled of burnt plastic and cheap coffee. Some nights, I barely slept 3 hours. My classmates posted photos of parties and road trips while I scrubbed grease off my diner uniform or hunched over broken laptops. I told myself, every sacrifice is a step closer to escape. It was during one of those long nights in the campus library that I stumbled upon the idea that would change everything. I was walking back to my dorm, my stomach growling after a dinner of stale crackers, when I saw students jogging across campus with Fitbits strapped to their wrists. I thought about how expensive those devices were, out of reach for people like me. What if, I murmured, pulling out a notebook, tracking health didn't have to cost a fortune? That single spark became an obsession. I named it Stepwise, a simple app that could track steps, sleep, and daily health habits. I wanted it to be for people like me, broke, overlooked, trying to take control of their lives. The first version was a disaster. I coded for weeks on my old, overheating laptop, sometimes falling asleep with the keyboard imprinted on my cheek. When I finally launched it on the App Store, I waited with my heart in my throat. 10 downloads. 8 of them were classmates. I'd begged to try it. Then came the reviews. Too slow. Crashes constantly. Battery drain, don't bother. Each word hit like a slap. One night, sitting in my dorm room, I threw my phone against the wall and curled into a ball on the floor. Maybe Dad was right, I thought bitterly. Maybe I'm just a dreamer with my head in the clouds. But the next morning, I picked the phone up, cracked screen and all, and whispered, "No, I won't let them be right about me." I worked harder, fixed bugs, added new features. I plastered cheap flyers around coffee shops and posted on online forums, begging strangers to give Stepwise a chance. Slowly, downloads trickled in. 50, then 100. Some users left kind reviews. This helps me stay motivated. Better than I expected. For the first time in my life, strangers not family saw value in something I created. One evening, I called home, the app open on my screen, excitement bubbling. "Dad," I said. I think this app could really take off. Maybe it could change everything. His laugh was sharp, dismissive. Serafina, apps don't pay the bills. Stop chasing fantasies. Be more like Matthew, he just got promoted to manager. My heart cracked, but I forced a smile into my voice. Good for him. When the call ended, I sat in the dark, staring at the glow of Stepwise on my laptop. Tears blurred the code, but I wiped them away. If my family couldn't believe in me, then I'd believe in myself. Months later, the impossible happened. An email appeared in my inbox from a mid-sized tech firm in Chicago. We're interested in Stepwise. Would you consider a collaboration? I reread the words so many times my vision blurred. My hands shook as I whispered into the empty room. They noticed me. But the joy was bittersweet, because the first people I wanted to call the ones who should have been proudest would never care. To them, I would never be special. And so, with each late night of coding, with every bug fixed and every new feature added, I told myself the same thing. One day, they'll regret underestimating me. One day, the world will know my name, even if my family never does. Stepwise was no longer just a side project. It became my lifeline. Every night, after classes and shifts, I locked myself in the library or the dim repair shop, the hum of broken computers around me. I coded until my fingers stiffened, until my eyes burned red. And then, one morning, an email changed everything. Subject: Proposal for acquisition. Stepwise. We are impressed by your work and would like to discuss acquiring Stepwise. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. I read it once, twice, 10 times. My hands trembled so hard I nearly dropped my phone. They want to buy it, I whispered to the empty dorm room. My heart pounded as if it might burst through my ribs. Weeks later, I stood in a gleaming Chicago office tower. Glass windows stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting a skyline I'd only ever seen in postcards. Across the table sat men in tailored suits, their smiles polished. Serafina, one of them said, sliding the contract toward me. We're prepared to offer $5.4 million. I swallowed hard, gripping the pen. $5.4 million. My entire life, every scraped knee and sleepless night, every ignored achievement and stale cookie, all condensed into this single moment. But my voice didn't shake when I said, 5.6. The room fell silent. One of the men arched an eyebrow. Another leaned back, exchanging glances. Finally, he chuckled. Confident. I like it. 5.6, it island. My signature bled across the page. With one stroke of ink, my life changed. That night, I sat in my cramped apartment, staring at the glowing numbers in my bank account. 5, 600, 0. I should have been euphoric. I should have popped champagne, screamed into the night, danced across the floor. Instead, I sat still, my chest hollow, because the first people I wanted to call, the people who should have said, "We're proud of you," Serafina wouldn't care. They never had. I dialed anyway. Mom answered, her voice tired. "Hello, Mom," I said softly, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. I did something big. My app, Stepwise, it's been acquired. Millions, Mom, millions. There was a pause. Then she said, flatly, "That's nice, honey. Did you hear Matthew got promoted? He's managing an entire team now. We're planning a celebration for him." The air left my lungs. I forced a weak laugh. "Of course. That's wonderful. Don't be jealous, Serafina. You've always managed fine on your own. Matthew needs encouragement more than you." Her words stung sharper than any blade. I wanted to scream. I worked myself to the bone for this. I built something from nothing. Why can't you see me? Instead, I whispered, "Right. Matthew deserves it." When I hung up, I stared at the silent phone, my reflection warped in the dark screen. I kept living as if nothing had changed. Still in my old apartment, still drinking cheap coffee from the corner shop, still wearing shirts with fraying collars. I told myself it wasn't about the money, it was about proving that I could, about showing the world and my family that I wasn't the invisible girl they'd pushed aside. But late at night, lying awake, I admitted the truth. I wanted them to look at me, just once, with pride. Just once. And that's when the idea came. A house. Not just any house, a bright, sunlit home with a white picket fence, the kind my parents always dreamed of. A place where they could retire, free from bills, and for Matthew, the brother who had been handed everything I bought, the car he always bragged about wanting, a sleek black SUV. I told myself, this will be the final gesture. If they can't love me after this, then nothing will ever change them. As Christmas drew near, I held the photos of the house and the car in my hands. My heart beat with desperate hope. Maybe, I whispered to the empty room, just maybe, this time, they'll see me. But deep inside, another voice answered. Or maybe they'll never see you, Serafina. Not even if you hand them the world. I didn't listen. I had already set the stage. The gift was ready. The phone call was coming. And the storm was just beginning. Christmas Eve arrived with a bitter chill that seeped through the cracks of my apartment windows. Outside, Chicago was buried under a quiet blanket of snow, but inside, my heart was a storm. I had everything prepared. The deed to the house, the keys to the SUV, the photographs printed in glossy perfection. I wanted them to know. To finally see me. So I did what I thought would heal old wounds. I called. The phone rang. My palms sweated despite the cold. Then Mom's voice answered, thin and impatient. Serafina, what is it now? I took a shaky breath, forcing a hopeful smile into my tone. Mom, I just wanted to say I'll be home for Christmas. I arranged everything at work. I'll come early, help decorate, cook. We can all be together again. And, for a heartbeat, silence. And then her voice sliced like ice. Don't come back. The words knocked the air out of me. What? This Christmas is only for special people, she said, flat and final. My chest caved. Special people? My voice trembled. I'm your daughter. Doesn't that count for something? In the background, Matthew's laugh rang out, mingled with the chatter of his kids. Dad's voice chimed, warm and cheerful, but not for me. Never for me. Mom sighed, as though I were a nuisance. Serafina, you're strong. You've always managed. But Matthew, he needs us. Don't ruin this for him. Please understand. I stared at my tiny Christmas tree, the cheap silver ornaments glinting faintly. My lips curled into a bitter smile. What a pity, I whispered. I had a special gift. What did you say? Mom's tone sharpened. But I hung up. The line went dead. My hands shook as I opened our family group chat. Dad, Mom, Matthew, all three names glaring back at me. I typed slowly, every letter a blade carving into my own heart. Too bad you just missed out on a special gift. I attached the photos, the White House glowing under winter sunlight, the sleek black SUV shining like obsidian. Then I hit send. I set the phone down, screen facing the table. For a moment, there was silence. And then the storm broke. The phone buzzed once, twice, a dozen times. My screen lit up with calls, texts, notifications spilling over like floodwater. Serafina, call me back now. Mom, sweetheart, don't be ridiculous. We were joking. Dad, what's with the house? Is that real? Sarah, answer me. Matthew. I didn't move. I sat back in my chair, wine glass in hand, and watched the screen glow and flicker, dancing like a desperate firefly. 1 call, 10 calls, 30 calls. By the time the night ended, my phone displayed 88 missed calls. 88. For 30 years, they ignored me. And now, in one night, they called more than they ever had in my entire life. Not for me, not for my worth, but for what I could give. I picked up the phone once, just once, when it buzzed in my hand. Mom's voice burst through, frantic. Serafina, honey, listen, we didn't mean it. You are special, you always have been. Just come back, okay? Let's talk. Don't be stubborn. I closed my eyes. For a fleeting second, I almost believed her. But then I heard it. The telltale crack in her voice, the hunger behind her words. Not love. Greed. Mom, I said softly, almost tenderly. You had 30 years to see me. 30 years. And all it took was a house and a car to make you remember my name. Serafina, please. Click. I ended the call. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching snowflakes spiral under the streetlights. My phone buzzed endlessly beside me, vibrating like it was alive, begging me to pick up. But I didn't. Instead, I whispered to the glass, to the empty streets, to the girl I used to be, "You don't need their love anymore. You've given enough." A strange calm settled over me. Not joy, not sadness, just clarity. The next day, I walked through the snow-covered streets, the cold biting at my skin. My thoughts were sharp, steady. When I passed families carrying gifts, laughing together, my heart ached. But not with longing, just recognition. I finally understood. Blood didn't make them my family. Love did, respect did, and those were gifts they never gave. I looked down at my phone, the screen filled with unread messages, unanswered calls. 88 desperate attempts, and I smiled. For the first time, I was the one who didn't answer. 3 days after Christmas, the snow in Chicago had turned to a dirty slush. I was sipping lukewarm coffee in my apartment when a knock thundered at my door. For a moment, I froze. My chest tightened as the thought hit me. They wouldn't dare. But when I opened the door, there they were. Mom, her eyes rimmed with red, Dad, shifting awkwardly beside her, and Matthew, arms folded, his jaw clenched in a way that told me he'd been dragged here against his will. "Serafina," Mom breathed, stepping forward. "Thank God. We just want to talk." I blocked the doorway with my body. "Talk? Or bargain?" Her lips trembled. "Sweetheart, don't be like this. About the house, the car, we just didn't understand." I laughed, sharp, bitter. "Understand what, Mom? That I existed? Because it took real estate for you to remember I was alive." Dad's voice broke in, rough but pleading. "We made mistakes. We didn't mean to push you away. You've always been our strong one, Sarah. We were just worried about Matthew." "Always Matthew?" I snapped, my voice rising despite myself. "Every excuse, every holiday, every birthday, it's always about him." Matthew stepped forward, his tone defensive. "Hey, I didn't ask for this. Don't pin it on me." I turned on him, fury surging. "You didn't have to ask, Matthew. You took everything because they handed it to you. Every coat, every gift, every ounce of attention. I was invisible, and you basked in the spotlight." He looked away, muttering, "I didn't know you felt that way." The words nearly made me laugh. "Didn't know? You saw me eating stale cookies while you had 3-tier cakes. You saw me working double shifts while you bragged about new phones. Don't you dare pretend you didn't know." The room fell silent, heavy with truths they'd spent decades burying. Finally, Mom whispered, "We love you, Serafina. You're our daughter. You're special." The word made my stomach turn. Special? Now I'm special? After 30 years of being your servant, your afterthought, your scapegoat, now I'm special because I have something you want? Tears welled in her eyes. "Please, just give us a chance to fix this." I stared at her, at all of them, and felt something shift inside me. The anger was still there, but beneath it was a cold clarity. I straightened my shoulders. My voice came out steady, strong. "No, I gave you chances. Every Christmas, every birthday, every achievement, I gave you chances to see me. And you looked away. Now, I don't need your apologies. I don't need your approval. And I sure as hell don't need to buy your love." Dad reached out, his hand hovering like he might touch my arm. "Sarah!" I stepped back. "Don't. You had 30 years to hold me. You chose not to." Matthew finally broke the silence, his tone sharp. "So what, you're cutting us off? Just like that?" I met his eyes, unflinching. "No, Matthew. You cut me off a long time ago. Tonight, I'm just making it official." For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint buzz of the heater in the corner. Then, slowly, I reached for the door and opened it wider, not to invite them in, but to show them the way out. "Thank you for coming," I said quietly. "But this conversation is over." Mom's lip quivered, Dad looked down at the floor, and Matthew scowled as though he'd rather be anywhere else. One by one, they filed out, their footsteps echoing down the hallway. When the door shut behind them, The silence was deafening, but it was a different silence. Not the silence of neglect, but the silence of freedom. I leaned against the door, breathing deeply. My hands still shook, but not from fear, from release. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten child begging to be seen. I was Serafina whole, enough, free. That night, I sat by my little Christmas tree, its dim lights flickering like fragile hope. I poured myself a glass of wine and whispered, "This is the last Christmas I'll ever spend waiting for them." I raised the glass to my reflection in the window. Not to my family, not to their empty words, but to myself. Because finally, I realized I didn't lose them tonight. I set myself free. After that night, I knew Chicago was no longer mine. Every corner, every cracked sidewalk, every gust of icy wind whispered memories I wanted to leave behind. So I packed my things into 2 suitcases, transferred the rest of my money into savings, and bought a one-way ticket west. I landed in a small coastal town in Oregon, where the air smelled of salt and pine, and the waves crashed against jagged rocks like a drumbeat for my new life. The cottage I bought wasn't grand, just a wooden house with peeling white paint, weathered shutters, and windows that opened to the sea. But when I unlocked the door and stepped inside, it felt like the first home I had ever chosen for myself. The silence here was different. Not empty, not cold, but peaceful. I began to live, really live, for the first time. I signed up for a painting class at the community center. I still remembered the flyer I once crumpled into my pocket as a child, the art program I'd been denied. Now, brushes and canvas finally filled my hands. The first time I dipped a brush into cobalt blue and swept it across the canvas, my heart trembled. "You've got an artist's soul," my teacher, an older woman with kind eyes, said, patting my shoulder. Her words, simple and sincere, struck me harder than any praise I'd ever longed for. Evenings were for music. I bought a second-hand guitar from a dusty shop on Main Street. At first, my fingers fumbled, the strings buzzing off-key. I laughed at myself, but each night I tried again. Sometimes, I sat on the porch as the sun sank into the horizon, strumming clumsy chords while the waves answered back. And, for the first time, the music wasn't for anyone's approval, it was just for me. I also joined a volunteer group that built playgrounds for underprivileged kids. The first time I dug into the earth with a shovel, surrounded by children's laughter, I felt lighter. A little boy with sandy hair wrapped his arms around my leg and said, "Thanks, lady. This playground's gonna be awesome." My throat tightened, but I smiled, ruffling his hair. "You're welcome. You deserve it." Each laugh, each grateful glance, stitched together parts of me that had been torn for decades. I decided to give back more. With part of my wealth, I set up a small scholarship for local students who dreamed big but lacked resources, kids like me. Each thank you note I received became a reminder. My scars could build bridges for someone else. Letters came in. "Because of you, I'll be the first in my family to go to college. Thank you for believing in me." Believing. A word my parents never knew how to say. A year later, Christmas came again. This time, I decorated my cottage with care. A larger tree stood in the corner, draped with lights and ornaments I'd chosen myself. On the table sat a roasted chicken, potatoes, and a bottle of good wine. Around the table were friends, my painting teacher, a neighbor couple who brought homemade pie, and a man from the volunteer group who always made us laugh with silly stories. We clinked glasses, sang carols off-key, and shared simple joys. It wasn't the grand Christmas of movies. It wasn't filled with glittering gifts or expensive feasts, but it was warm, genuine, and mine. When the night ended, I stepped onto the porch, watching the moonlight shimmer across the waves. The wind carried salt and freedom. I lifted my glass of wine, whispering to the night, "This is family." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message from Mom. Another missed call from Dad. A short text from Matthew. "We need to talk." I didn't answer. Not out of anger, but because I no longer needed to. They could chase the shadow of who they thought I was. I had already found the light of who I truly am. As I sipped the wine, I thought of my grandfather's voice, echoing from years ago. "You're a special kid, Serafina. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Back then, I hadn't believed it. But now, With the ocean before me and love surrounding me, not from blood, but from choice, I finally did. Special. Not because of what I gave, not because of what I endured, but because I had survived, grown, and created a life where I was enough. Closing lesson. Sometimes blood is nothing more than shared DNA. Real family is where there's respect, love, and peace. I spent years begging for scraps of affection, when all along, the greatest gift was learning to love myself. That Christmas, under the glow of my tree and the crash of the waves, I knew the truth. I hadn't lost a family. I had built one, and for the first time in my life, I was free.